Hi, Sarah. It's Mary. I'm very excited to one day meet you, hopefully, so that we can have this conversation in person. You asked me to send you a short video about intake and coordination and closing out projects and how that works for me in communication style. So, just to give you a quick, short rundown of how things, how I know them, is I'm just going to give it in parallel to my previous experience, since I don't have any experience in the construction business. But what I used to do before is project management, where a client would come in with a project that was already sold by a salesperson from our company. It was a very small company, and once the project was in our hands, I was the project manager to then meet the customer and do a meet and greet with that customer, usually via Zoom, but hopefully here it's on the islands, and so I can do it in person. It's to confirm with the package that they purchased and their expectations of what it'll do to enhance or improve their operations. For my circumstance, it was in housekeeping, and to improve housekeeping efficiencies and operations and how supplies and linens were distributed amongst the department and amongst the hotel. So it was quite a logistics procedure, because it would affect every person who worked in the department and cause a lot of change, good change for most people. And so we would meet with the client to discuss first their expectations, what kind of challenges they were up against, and what our services would promise and promote for them. But number two, make sure that the planning for their actual purchase, the physical purchase, meaning the equipment that we would install for them, would also meet their specifications. And so the meet and greet would be a confirmation or a build of a relationship to make sure that we're all on the same page together, and that I'm the point of contact to organize everything from behind the scenes with the company that I work for, ensuring that all of their concerns are met, that if anything is going to happen that may be a bump or an obstacle along the way, that I'm going to be the point person to come to, that I'm going to be speaking with them proactively, and before we even get started with anything, that I'm going to confirm all details with them before we even start building anything for their design or for their company. So yeah, the intake is certainly building a relationship of trust, confirming all the facts, and giving them assurance that whatever they've purchased through our company, that I'm the point person for it, and that we can provide what we've asked for. And if there's any bumps along the way, that we'll solve problems together, and know that change is not always an easy thing to go through. So we understand that there might be a lot of different perspectives that people have along the way. And I'm here to kind of smooth those things out and make their installation process seamless for them, not for just themselves, but for anybody that they're serving. So in my case, it was for the whole housekeeping department, doing trainings, being very clear and consistent with what our product would do for them, what the service would do for them, how their lives would change with the impact of what we were installing, and all the benefits that would happen, and then answering questions person by person as they would come up during that process. And the company I used to work for, the installation process would normally take anywhere from 14 days to 6 months, depending on the size of the hotel. So we become very intimate with the teams that were there, and by the end of the installation, we were all very good friends and co-workers together as we worked in their operations together. So it's a long-term relationship building of trust, and being one-on-one with them and part of their team all along the way. So the intake service is incredibly important to set first impressions and to start a process of trust where we can learn how to communicate with each other, and, like you said, get to know their client profile and how they communicate with us as well, what their preferred methods of contact, preferred methods of detail, and learning kind of how the other person works so that we can manage and adjust. And for myself on the inside, it was knowing who my high maintenance clientele were versus people who are a little more lenient and laid back, and who needed urgent updates, who was going to be more more just hands-on and needed more details, more in-person contact sometimes, or more phone calls, less emails. It all depends on the person that we're dealing with. And I know all kinds of communication styles work for different individuals. And so that's how my communication style is with the client. It's whatever works best for them: email, phone call, in-person contact, walking sites together, going to factory if that need to be, to see things in process. Sometimes people wonder about our processes and how they work, and need to get in those kind of involved in details. But I try to keep it at hand's length to keep them focused on the results and outcomes, and whatever we're dealing with on the inside of the company we deal with, because the communication style internally then turns over to, once I know what the client needs, it's coordination. So it's a second part, and coordinating with the internal team. So in my old job, what I used to do is put together a factory order, which went over the whole details after a final planning meeting that was done with the client, a complete walkthrough, 100% of the questions asked, very detailed, could take up to 3 or 4 days, consecutive days. I used to travel for work, so I traveled to their destination, and my complete focus was to be on site, working with them, and then going back and putting documents and details together, asking our factory questions, getting their input, any questions they may have that I need to ask the client, and going back and forth so I can be that main in-between person, and maintaining all the coordinative activities, and then putting together their final planning details. And then finally, of course, for that coordination is going over every detail with the client before we begin to make any kind of manufacturing in the factory, to get things done for them, and then starting the logistics of how we're going to install it with our teams that we're going to be on site. So coordination it was heavy. Communication with our teams was all about details down to documents, factory orders, details, so that every person who was in the factory knew exactly what pieces went where. Trainings were put together, training manuals were put together, training presentations put together. Lots of communication with the internal teams about how we're going to present to the clients, and the changes that were going to happen depending on the different sizes of the hotels we would go to, and the different types of systems that we would be installing. So everything was custom to the client at hand. Every client was different, just like I'm sure you're experiencing. Their expectations are different, their desires are different, the impact they want on their teams are different, what they want to see, what they want to feel, what they're kind of expecting. And our goal is to exceed those expectations, because while they purchase a product or they purchase a service, we want to make it the best that we know how as a company. And sometimes that's the only thing we know internally is the outcome that we see over and over and over again when we make transformations in people's lives, when we give them those services. And so those coordination details happen long before we manufacture, and then along the manufacturing process, there's shipping and logistics, and all the other details that come into play when it comes to making sure that we're ready to ship, we're ready to install, we're ready to quality check when it gets there, we're ready to ensure that the installation services go without a hiccup, that we're on site, that we deliver on what we promise. And that comes from a whole team effort. So yes, as a project manager or a coordinator, it ensures that everybody's on the same page to know the type of person, the type of client we're working with, and their expectations, and our goals to meet and exceed those expectations with them. And then finally, we have the closeout. So once the whole project is done and we're done installing, and we finished all the training, and we've buttoned up all the loose ends, and every final detail, every T is crossed, every I is dotted, every piece and part of the puzzles put together, their SOPs, their training parts, their warranty manuals, everything that we need to button up the project has been delivered, bowed up, tied up, handed over to the client, everything reviewed with them, absolutely all the big players at the very end, to ensure their satisfaction and their feedback about our performance with them, and how they feel that we partnered with them, and did they receive the value that they purchased with us, and would they recommend us to another person? Would they review us, and how would they rate us? if they were to recommend us to another partner, to vendor for someone else. So that follow up is important, and not just that, but continuing that long-term relationship. My experience in my previous projects is that all of the different directors that I've worked with in the clientele, I still have relationships with them today. I could certainly give you references to people I've worked with in the past where I was their installer, was their project manager, and the company that I used to work for in the mainland, about how I work and communication styles and their specific feedback. I'd love to put you in contact with them so that that you know that you have a solid background of who you're hiring and my loyalties to the company, and more importantly, the dedication that I have to ensure that I'm not working for myself, I'm working for the company and the people that I work with, so that we all look great, so that we're all together, so that when we do have hiccups, we all learn together, that one project after the other just gets better and better because we learn how to anticipate, we learn how to modify, we learn how to problem solve. If it's issues in our operations, if it's issues in our communication, if it's issues in our project flow, if it's issues in timing, if it's issues in shipping, whatever it is, that we can have open teamwork and communication with each other to make those processes better. We can only be as good as the weakest person on our team, and so it's always good to bring along those people. And I've certainly worked on several different teams with different abilities, and so I grew from not knowing anything to having to also learn a lot to get to this position as well. So yes, those would be the three factors. The closeout being the biggest one, so that we have a fan in our pocket who is going to continue to utilize us as a resource and to advocate for us, and not just on social media, but also by word of mouth and by relationships and continued relationships along the way. A business here in Hilo and on the Big Island, of course, is about this community and about aloha and helping each other out. And it's not just in the business that we do, but in our lives each day. So these are long-term relationships we get into when we work in businesses. And that's how it is working in a small community, and how it is working in a small factory, and lifting each other up every day to come to work with a positive attitude and to be ready for challenges, and knowing we're not alone in it, that each of us have different strengths we bring to the job, and that it all takes us time to understand all those things. So thank you for listening to this short video. Try to make it as short as possible. As you can tell, I'm a little bit talkative, but I do like building those relationships with folks and giving them more than what they've asked for as far as when it comes to business and services. Again, I look forward to meeting you one day, Sarah, and I hope this video finds you well, and mahalo. Bye-bye.